Again, I don't do intro, so we're just gonna fly right into the stuff. And if you couldn't tell exactly what I'm intending to talk about today, you're stupid.
I, mm,
Maybe I'll
yeah,
put an end scene right there and just pretend like the video's over, if I feel like it. But no, today we're gonna talk about the fighter. You can find most of this information on D&D Beyond, obviously because I'm using it right here, but otherwise it's just going to be a small speech about it.
fair
Joining
fight.
me is Undead, the fool.
And what's good?
He doesn't deny it because he knows it's true.
It's hard to deny the truth, although many people do it. Anyway,
Yeah. So, the fighter. A human in clanging plate armor holds her shield down before her as she runs toward the masked goblins. Not the gobbles. An elf behind her, clad in studded leather armor, peppers the goblins with arrows loose from his exquisite bow. The half-orc nearby shouts orders, helping the two combatants coordinate their assaults to the best advantage. A dwarf in chainmail interposes a shield between the ogre's club and his companion, knocking the deadly blow aside. His companion, a half-elf in scale armor, swings two scimitars in a blinding swirl as she circles the ogre, looking for blind spots in his defenses. A gladiator fights for sport in an arena, a master with his trident and net, skilled at toppling foes and moving around them for the crowd's delight and his own tactical advantage. His opponent's sword flares with blue light an instant before she sends the lightning flashing forth to smite him. Now that's a paladin, not a fighter, but sure. All of these heroes are fighters, perhaps the most diverse class of characters in the world of Dungeons and Dragons, questing knights, conquering overlords, world champions, elite foot soldiers, hardened mercenaries, and bandit kings. As fighters, they all share an unparalleled mastery of weapons and armor, and a thorough knowledge of the skills of combat. And they are well acquainted with death, both meting it out and staring it defiantly in the face.
all right.
I'm trying to think. Whatever. So popping down just a wee bit, we're gonna go over here. Well-rounded specialists. Fighters learn the basics of all combat styles. Every fighter can swing an lance, fence with a rapier, wield a longsword or a greatsword, use a bow, and even trap foes in a net with some degree of skill. Likewise, a fighter is adept with shields and every form of armor. Beyond that basic degree of familiarity, each fighter specializes in a certain style of combat. Some concentrate on archery, some on fighting with two weapons at once, and some on augmenting their martial skills with magic. We're looking at you, Ekon, and Eldritch Knight. The combination of raw general ability and extensive specialization makes these fighters superior combatants on the battlefield and in dungeons alike. Trained for danger. Not every member of the City Watch, the village militia, or the Queen's Army is a fighter. Most of these troops are relatively untrained soldiers with only the most basic combat knowledge. Veteran soldiers, military officers, trained bodyguards, dedicated knights, and similar figures are fighters. Some fighters feel drawn to use their training as adventurers. The dungeon delving, monster slaying, and other dangerous work common among these adventurers is second nature for a fighter. Not all that different from the life he or she left behind. There are greater risks, perhaps, but also much greater rewards. Few fighters in the City Watch have the opportunity to discover a magic flame-tongue sword, for example. Yeah, that's real. So, hearing that, Undead, is there anything you would like to add before we start talking about the class features?
Uh, so far from what I heard from what you read, this class is a jack of all trades, basically any special weapon they can do with. And any type of fighting style they can easily learn. Which, combat-wise, I find that very fucking useful.
So, obviously, the fighter is basically the ideal situation when it comes to just a pure combative person. You might look at a barbarian for some things, but he uses his rage where the fighter uses his skill. Someone's going to be triggered by that, but that's fine. So, starting off with the class features, they have a D10 hit die. I mean, his health. I can't really get too much in these, because, you know, the barbarian has more, but he also has that rage, which makes it get even less, so basically the barb has almost twice the health as almost everyone else. But pushing beyond that, we're looking at the proficiencies. They have proficiency in all armors, light, medium, and heavy, plus shields. And then they have proficiencies in all weapons, simple weapons, and martial weapons. That includes the range varieties, too, apparently. They don't have any tool proficiencies, although I don't think a lot of classes have tool proficiencies, other than, I think, the rogue, it's like thieves' tools, and maybe a druid? I think they have something with medicine stuff, but I can't remember correctly. Coming to saving throws, I had someone tell me that we should have talked about these a little bit in the last one, so I'm going to talk about it now. The strength saving throw is a mainly focused saving throw that prevents you from being moved from a spot when you're subject to a saving throw. So if a big gust of wind comes at you and hits you full in the face, you roll a strength saving throw to prevent it from moving you. And if you listen to other people, you don't really use that a lot, but there are a couple spells. There's some 9th level, and then there's some other things that I can't remember, even though I looked at them, that do require strength. And then Constitution saving throws, which is a significantly more common. It's such as resisting effects such as being poisoned, and I think even petrified. It also is used to make concentration checks when you are a magic user or anyone else who is happening to be concentrating on a spell effect. Those concentration checks come with a DC of 10 or half the damage you receive, whichever is higher. So as an Eldritch Knight with concentration effects, this would actually be very good for him. And then we look at the skills. We got acrobatics, animal handling, athletics, history, insight, intimidation, perception, and survival. Acrobatics is for the nimble, jump around kind of stuff. Animal handling is for dealing with animals and seeing how you can tame them, which would be good for a cavalier. Athletics is your overall physical might, how you climb and how you go through rugged terrain type things. History is the knowledge of what has come before. Insight is the knowledge of people in themselves. Intimidation is forcing someone to bow to your point of view. Perception is understanding your surroundings and knowing what's kind of there and what kind of shouldn't be. And survival is how you track and, for the most part, skin things. Anything you'd like to add, Sir Undead?
So far, from just hearing about this character, a word I'm going to use often describing him is Jack of all trades, but something else I want to call him is reliable. From what I'm hearing, he is, in case your team is focused mainly on one thing, like brute strength or pure intelligence, this guy is who you have around just in case, like, if your rogue isn't there, he can pick a lock. In case you're in a survival situation, he can hunt and keep you alive. And so far, I'm enjoying him purely for his, again, reliability.
The biggest thing that the fighter has over a barbarian is that he can be dex-based and not lose any features of his class.
Right.
Sure, his strength saving throw might be lower, but having that extra dexterity is actually quite the benefit. So he could dodge that fireball. If he wields a shield, he can use a feat that I'm not going to mention because I don't do that. Although I probably will talk a little bit about feats for the fighter, considering he gets the most. But we'll get to that when we get down there. So, looking through the equipment that you can start with, you can get chainmail or leather armor with a longbow. Depending on what you do, you might go with the longbow if you have a lot of dex. You can get a martial weapon and a shield or 2 martial weapons, a light crossbow and 20 bolts or 2 hand axes, and then you get either the pack of a dungeoneering or explorer, which each comes with their own variety of stuff. Alright. So now we're going to start at the first thing a fighter starts to get, which is the fighting style. Getting this at level 1, you can select one of several different types of things. An archer skilled with his bow pulls back the string as he lays a nice target upon the goblin that is currently harrying an innocent civilian. He slowly feels the wind blow by as he releases the arrow, pointing slightly left toward the goblin. The wind catches the arrow and then slams it dead through the eye. As it falls dead, the civilian gets away. Looking at the archery fighting style, you gain a +2 bonus to your attack rolls when you use a ranged weapon. So that's just a straight buff to damage anytime you hit with any kind of ranged weapon. I think it even works with guns, question mark? And maybe some thrown javelins, because those would be ranged at that moment. The fighter, having learned the ins and outs of his armor, carefully positions his body as he takes a blow so that it strikes the most durable part of his chest piece, glancing off and barely leaving a dent on his body. The defense fighting style, while wearing armor, you gain a +1 to AC. Pretty much in this little fighting style, you just learn the best way to use the armor that you're currently wearing. Dueling. The fighter wields his one-handed weapon with nothing else, maybe a shield if he felt like it, but this time he feels like having just a gentle sparring match with his opponent. But in this situation, his opponent is not as skilled as him, as he deftly parries it to the side and then slips straight through, ignoring a piece of his armor and just stabbing him lightly in the leg. He quickly wins this battle. Dueling. When wielding a melee weapon in one hand and no other weapons, you gain a +2 bonus to damage rolls with that weapon. So if you're one-handing a rapier or a longsword or a battle axe, and you can use a shield, you will get this extra damage with the shield. It's basically the inverse of archery. It's just for melee weapons. Then we come to great weapon fighting. As the warrior wields his two-handed sword and swings down upon his opponent, it slams in, and for some reason he doesn't feel like he put enough force in it, and he reasserts his effort and drives it nice and deep inside. Great weapon fighting. When you roll a 1 or a 2 on a damage die for your attack, when you make a melee weapon that is using 2 hands, you can re-roll that die and must use the new roll, even if it is 1-2. The melee weapon must have the two-handed or versatile property for you to gain this benefit. So you can be wielding a longsword and just two-handed, but basically it gives you the chance of saying no to those 1s or 2s when you roll them, and potentially get, say you got a great axe, you can roll 12, or get rid of those 1s on your 2d6s of the great sword and get maybe 2 6s. But if you roll it twice in a row, well, you're just out.
Interesting.
Then we come to the protection. As the fighter is sitting there with his comrade, both of them just enjoying a moment to enjoy the peace of the day, he gets this weird feeling as he hears a noise, and before even either of them two can properly react, he shoots up his sword and deflects an arrow that is coming out of the sky. Protection fighting style. When a creature you can see attacks another target that is within 5 feet of you, you can use your reaction to impose disadvantage on the attack roll, and you must be wielding a shield. I said sword, but, you get the idea. And then two weapons.
You get the gist.
I'm giving false information, even though they can be clearly on screen. We have 2-weapon fighting. When you engage in 2-weapon fighting, you can add your ability modifier to the damage of the second attack. So the dual-wielding man with his 2 scimitars does an elegant dance against his foe, 1/2/3/4. As he just spins in this elegant dance that would make even the most talented of ballerinas cry. In this case, you just add when you make the bonus action attack from your dual wielding, you can actually add the modifier, because if you have 1 weapon in each hand, you can use a regular attack action, lets you hit with your main weapon, which gets the modifier automatically, and then by that action you can use a bonus action for that weapon in your other hand, although typically it doesn't gain any extra damage from your stats, but this fixes that. Before I go anywhere else, I'm going to hop down here to the optional features, because they did add a few more fighting styles down here. Blinded by sand that has been thrown in his face, the fighter kind of just sits there and he just waits. And then he gets this otherworldly monotone that something just is coming behind him, and as he throws his shield back, he blocks a giant sword that clangs deeply, makes him buckle a little bit, but then he swings his own sword back, taking off the arm of his would-be assailant. Blind fighting. You have blind sight with a range of 10 feet. Within that range, you can effectively see anything that isn't behind total cover, even if you are blinded or in darkness. Moreover, you can see an invisible creature within that range unless the creature successfully hides from you. So, if you are in darkness, if you can't see, if it's invisible, provided it hasn't actually hid, you can see it without your eyes.
You got night vision, baby.
Sure.
I mean, in a sense.
Next, we come up to Interception. Fighting a very hard fight, they're being slowly overwhelmed by a large group of goblins. He sees that his friend is on his last leg, and as one of the goblins tries to stab him, he shoots out his sword this time and catches it. The weapon still manages to hit his friend, but not as bad as it would have if he hadn't tried to stop it. And they're able to continue the fight, just barely. Interception. When a creature you see hits a target other than you within 5 feet of you with an attack, you can use your reaction to reduce the damage the target takes by a d10 plus your proficiency to a minimum of 0 damage. You must be wielding a shield or a simple or martial weapon to use this reaction. So, it's one of those things like, you could use protection or you could use interception. I almost would like interception better. Just because it makes you feel more like a hero to your ally if you take that damage to 0. Because at the same time, if you give a disadvantage and they still hit, well, I mean, they're still going to take all that damage. Superior technique. I'm not really going to go with a variety option for this one, because this would be something I'd talk about at the Battle Master. You basically learn one of the maneuvers from the Battle Master, which has a DC equal to 8 plus your proficiency, strength, or dex, depending on your choice, and you gain 1 superiority die, which is a D6. And that's used to fuel your stuff, and you regain it whenever you finish a short or long rest. Not, like I said, I don't really talk about this one. I would talk about it more on the actual vid we do with the Battle Master, because that's a varietized topic, and they have quite a number of maneuvers that will take a moment to look at.
And when it says a moment, it means well over a moment.
Then we look at the thrown weapon fighting. You can draw a weapon that has a thrown property, such as a javelin or a hand axe, as part of the attack you make with the weapon. In addition, when you hit with a ranged attack using a thrown weapon, you gain a +2 bonus to the damage roll. Which I guess you could use this one for the melee weapons as opposed to archery, but either way.
Could you use a dagger?
Oh.
Like when you said throwing weapons, I imagine dagger.
Yes, you're right.
Immediately.
You could in fact use a dagger on this. You are very right. I keep going with more of the martial weapons because I keep seeing daggers and whatnot as the rogue's item, but no, daggers are throwable weapons. And lastly, something that gives a monk a run for their money, unarmed fighting, which you take at level 1. Your unarmed strikes can deal bludgeoning damage equal to 1d6 plus your strength modifier. If you hit, if you aren't wielding any weapons or shields when you make the attack, it becomes a d8 instead. And at the start of each of your turns, you can deal 1d4 bludgeoning damage to a creature grappled by you. So it just if you want to picture it, you just assume that the fighter has somebody in a headlock, and then like every time it comes to their time, they just squeeze a little harder. Nah, but if you look, I forget where the monk exactly gets it, but they start off with a D4 that turns into a D6 that turns into a D8, but it takes them, I think, like a couple of levels to do that, so the fighter immediately almost starts off doing the double damage for their fist. Sure, the monk can get, 3 attacks at the start, and then 4 once they hit level 5, but at the end of the day, the fighter will outclass them and never hits with their fist. I think the monk does get, I think it's a D10 or a D12 in their finality. I think it's D10 for their unarmed strikes, but if the fighter went just pure fists, he'd beat the monk for a while. Alright. That finishes our current talk about the fighting styles. We got a lot of different choices to choose here and a lot of different things for different kind of characters. It's very good for the character building. If you want a man who focuses on archery, there you go. If you want a mainstay tank, you got defense. If you want someone who's very good at just combat, you got multiple things. If you want to go for that hero route, you got 2 different styles of things to save a person from being struck.
The only type of people that the fighter isn't good for are people with anxiety and can't deal with making choices. And I know a few of those people.
Now they did recently make a feat where you can actually choose a fighting style. So if you were a rogue and you wanted to have that extra damage on both your attacks, you could do that. You could do it on this fighter and gain a second fighting style. And if you were to go to champion, you could have technically 3 fighting styles in one person. So there are ways to get more of these, but it's that one kind of thing. But in terms of my opinion for this, the fighter fighting styles with all the variety and all the things you can do by their way, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10 just because you only really get to choose one. Although another thing that did, you know what? No, I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10, because when they did bring out tosses, you can, when you get an ability score thing, you can actually swap your fighting style as it's something you've learned to grow into. And I definitely think that's a very good thing, being able to change it. Maybe not every level, but once you get those ability score increases or potential feat changing what your fighting style is, I mean, you got so many different variations to choose from, and there's so many different uses and strengths for them. I just think it's a great set of abilities, even though it's limited to just one.
I'd give it a solid 8.
Give it a solid 8.
Yeah. Like, how I see it, could you have multiple fighting styles, or would you have to stick with one?
You could technically have multiple fighting styles, that's what I'm saying. Like, because if you choose the champion, you can get an additional one. And there's a feat where you can also get an additional one. You could potentially have 3, although it would require a choice of your martial archetype or a feat. Which, as a fighter, you get more feats. I think you get 7, as opposed to everyone else's 5.
Then I raised it up to a 9.
Gonna go 9? Alrighty. Alright, we talked a lot about the fighting styles, but now we come to some of the other abilities, finally. Which are still at level 1, mind you. Second Wind.
Oh.
The fighter is bleeding from multiple wounds all over his body. The enemy is standing there, ready to strike down. He takes a moment and breathes in a deep breath as he focuses on the fight ahead as opposed to everything else, and he ignores his wounds temporarily as he proceeds to fight his foe. Second Wind. You have a limited well of stamina that you can draw on to protect yourself from harm. On your turn, you can use a bonus action to gain hit points equal to 1d10 plus your fighter level, a maximum of 30, but that's still quite a bit of health. Once you use this feature, you must finish a short or long rest to use it again.
Anime shit level 1.
Anime shit level 1. Gets his ass beat, stands up, and just like, I'm fine.
Cuts off his leg, I'm fine.
I mean, it's a almost a free heal ability. It's better. It can potentially be better than a healing potion. And if you look at the official rules, using a healing potion is always a main action as opposed to a bonus action. A lot of people tend to use self-use. So I would definitely give this a 9 out of 10 because it's healing. It's not a huge amount, but depending on what you're fighting and depending on the situation, that's a lot of health you can get back if you roll really well. Plus, you get it back on a short rest as opposed to a bunch of the long ones. So, a lot of these short rest things are really good.
Okay, so you said this can be a what's the word? Not a main action, but
A bonus action.
Yeah, bonus action. You said it's a bonus action?
Yes, sir. I mean, you can read it right there on the screen.
Then yeah, I'd probably have to agree with you. I know. I was just trying to think of the word before, or like reading through the entire. Anyway, but no, I would agree. Give it a 9 out of 10. Potions. Using a potion on a main action is so weird. Anyway.
I mean, you gotta reach into your pack, you gotta pull it out, you gotta unstop the core, you gotta chug it right in front of the enemy. It makes sense in the game terms, but almost I can't really think of a lot of tables that make it actually an action. They typically use it if you're using on yourself a bonus action, or if you're using it to bring up an ally, they make it that an action. Which that one I can agree with more. Then after that
I feel like a lot of DMs. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I feel like a lot of DMs that are like, this is stupid. We're not gonna make it a main action.
It kind of is, but some another ones kind of agree that otherwise it looks too video gamey because you're chugging a potion with one hand and slashing with the other sword with the other hand.
True. I feel like
Because I mean, if you do it in Skyrim, the game pauses, and while I guess you're having their
Gulp,
stop
gulp,
time, you're eating like 700 cheese wheels and drinking
gulp.
38 potions. Or if you were to do that in real life, if you were to put a cork in your mouth, the other guy would probably just ram it down your throat and make you choke to death on it.
Yeah. No, I feel like second wind would be really useful if like you're doing like a hardcore survival type campaign where you actually count arrows. You do the main action for the potion. Uh, Short and long rests are not very. It's not much of an option most of the time.
Mm-hmm. But
So,
like I said, being able to do it with a short or long rest to get it back is actually quite the plus on that.
yeah, I'm still gonna give it like a 9.
I was good at a 9. So coming up to the second level ability, you get Action Surge. The fighter facing off against his foe, bleeding from his brow and nearing the ends of his limits, sees that his opponent is also in the same last leg. He searches deep within, and within inside a spark erupts into a blazing roar as he pushes beyond his limits and surges forward, attacking his opponent with renewed vigor that cuts him down in an instant. Action Surge. Starting at second level, you push your body beyond its normal limits for one. On your turn, you can take one additional action. Once you use this feature, you must finish a short rest or a long rest before you can use it again. Starting at level 17, you can use it twice, but only once on the same turn.
Wait.
So starting at level 2, Action Surge doesn't really seem much. It just says you get an extra action, which would be one extra attack, or maybe you take the dodge action, maybe you take the dash action, maybe you take the disengage. It doesn't really matter. But if you sit for a moment and look, if you were to use the haste spell, which gives you an additional attack, that's just one additional attack. If you look at extra attack, and then combine it with the Action Surge, you don't do 3 attacks, you will then do 4. And then say you're level 11, you won't do 4 attacks, you'll do 6. Then at 20, you won't do, 5 attacks? You'll do 8.
When I read this, it just makes me think, this sounds like the fighter version of Rage.
It basically is. Where Rage basically makes you hard to kill, Action Surge makes it to where you beat the ever-living shit out of something. Like I said, if you are level 20, and over the course of 2 rounds, you could make upwards of 16 attacks, 18 if you're dual wielding.
Oh.
And then you take a short rest and you can do it again to something else in the same day.
That does sound powerful.
And let's also say, just because we're probably going to talk about the champion anyway in this video, just because he has a short thing, if you're level 20 as a champion fighter who gets criticals on 18s, 19s, and 20s, over that course of 18 attacks, I don't expect you to roll a lot of 20s, but I can definitely see you rolling multiple 19s or 18s, so I could just assume that almost half of those attacks could be criticals. I think one of the best real uses I've seen, mainly, I tend to watch Critical Role, I won't watch a lot, but it was when Percy was fighting against the one black dragon. I forget what her name was, but they had hunted her down to a lab, and he had dropped his gun for a while and taken up a Dragon Slayer sword. The moment she lost her invisibility, he walked up to her, beat the hell out of her with the sword 1 round, Action Surge, and then beat her up with a sword again. I think he dealt over 140 damage in that single turn because of the Dragon Slayer longsword against the dragon. And then the dragon promptly beat him to death the next turn. But
he gave it a good go.
Oh, he basically gave them the chance. No, without doubt, though, Action Surge is a 10 out of 10. And you can't change my mind.
Yeah, I'm probably... I'm gonna do what I did with Rage and give it a 9 because I feel like
You bastard.
no, hold on. I'm gonna say 9 because it does. It's kind of the same thing with Rage. Like you have to get lucky to actually do what you're trying to do with it, and that's do damage.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can do this and get like extra turns, but it's what if you just roll all natural ones? How are you gonna feel?
I mean, you can say that with any character. If you roll all natural ones, you're not really going to do anything. Although, if you compare it to the barbarian, I mean, technically he has it better. Because at low levels, once the barbarian rages, like I think at level 2 he has 2. If he rages his 2 things, he can't take a short rest. He has to take a long rest to get his stuff back. This guy, so far, all the abilities you get back right now are on a short rest.
I'm still gonna stick with 9.
You upset me. But you know what? That's your thing. So at 3rd level, we always get our martial archetypes. We might talk about one depending on how I feel about the length of this video, which is only at 30 minutes. So we're not going to talk about that yet. But we will talk about the ability score improvements. Not that there's a whole lot, because we don't like to talk about feats for a major part of this. But it's important to talk about the fighter because he gets it better. He gets an ability score improvement or a feat at level 4, 6, 8, 12, 14, 16, and 19th level. He gets the most out of any class. Right? So he's very likely to get several of his ability scores to 20. He could probably get his... Let's say he's ignoring his strength, but still gets to 16, and then gets 20 dex, 20 con... Maybe he gets 20 int because he wants to have be an Eldritch Knight. He could have like 18 charisma. It just depends on what you roll and how you play it. But overall, and even then you could just throw that away. Because I can live with 18s in stats. Those are still really good, especially once you start getting your like bonus proficiency points. You're not really going to be left behind at a 18. Maybe I wouldn't probably go with 16 because I just feel like that'd be kind of low. But 18 and 20 is kind of where I'd be happy with a lot of things.
I mean, 18, you can't really be mad with an 18 in any case.
You cannot. You can be mad with a 19, you can be mad with a 17, but you can't be mad with the even number 18, 20. So, and even if I wasn't looking at that, I could go at level 14. Say I got a 2-handed unwitting glaive. I could get Great Weapon Master. Level 6, I get Polearm Master. At level 8, I get Sentinel. At level 12, I get... Let's say I get Resilience and take Dexterity saving throws. Level 16. Let's get that additional fighting style. Maybe I take it a little earlier. Level 19. Maybe I take luck. And that's not saying, what if you're a variant human or one of the special lineages, you get an extra feat at the start too. So that if you go like this, you can get 8 feats if you really wanted to. But no. Again, I'm not going to rank that just because of the way they work. So those are 2 skills we're now looking at. And then, as you can see, there's not really much else for us to talk about the fighter here, other than 2 abilities, and one technically comes on 3 times. We're looking at extra attack. Having trained most of his life under the tutelage of his father and a specialized tutor, this warrior knows how to swing his weapon, he knows how to counter and reposit it in all the same moves, and he strikes with the volition of 1,000 suns. Extra attack. Starting at 5th level, you gain the ability to attack twice when you take the attack action. This number increases to 3 when you reach 11th level, and it increases to 4 at 20th level. The fighter gets the most easiest way to do more attacks than all the other classes. I mean, sure, if you've got Great Weapon Master and you get a critical hit, You can get an extra attack with your bonus action that's regularized. You could be a Berserker Barbarian and get those 3 attacks. You could be a Monk who has to spend a key point to do 4 attacks. But a level 20 fighter just does that all naturally. He doesn't have to spend anything to get it. And like I said, you can Accenture to level 20 and do 8 attacks in a round. 9 if you're dueling.
With all
Action Surge
these,
just happens. It's not a bonus action, it's not an action. It just happens.
with all these features and abilities, it makes me think how cool would maxed out PvP battles be, especially with basic characters, but with awesome stuff like this.
I don't know if you were to have level 20 characters fighting each other, it'd be a real matter of what their archetypes are, how their feats worked, and stats once their magic items. It could be a very long fight. It could be a very short fight.
Exactly. That's why I like. That's what I like to think about. It's either like over in 2 turns or over in 2 hours.
I know
I
I
like
didn't
the
really,
idea of it.
yeah, I didn't give the barbarian a high thing because on his extra attack, just because when because I could not think about the fighter during that. Like I gave the barbarian a lower score for his extra attack, but on a fighter, I have to give that. Yeah, I have to give that a full score or a 10 because it's just a solid plus. Most of the abilities that a fighter gets at his base level are purely addition. There's no real negativities to them. I mean, yes, you gotta wait to get them something back, but that's the difference of like just a 30-minute rest where you can also heal naturally with your hit dice, versus like the barbarian having to take a long rest to get his rage back so he can only take half damage. Most of his stuff is just natural.
Yeah, you're not wrong. The idea of just being able to attack over and over and over, it brings me joy. Like, it really does.
And I know the barbarian
With
can automatically get advantage every turn, but let's say for the sake of it, you're a battle master fighter and you use the trip action on your first hit, on your very first attack, and you set them prone. Now all those 7 extra hits that you do with your action surge are made at advantage. Let's say that the monk came over, gave him the Vulcan nerve pinched, and stunned him. Now you have advantage on every one of those attacks. Now every one of those attacks are a critical hit if you hit him.
I mean, and part of the reason why I've been enjoying Barbarian with certain characters, there is 2 features. Reckless Attack in Great Weapons Master. Reckless Attack gives you bonus advantage on any attack roll. But Great Weapons Master, if I'm remembering it correctly, it takes away 5 from your highest roll, but it also adds, I believe, 10 damage to the first
damage.
10 flat damage for the first successful roll.
I mean, no. Any attack that you use Great Weapon Master, whether you're a fighter or a barbarian, every attack, if you use Great Weapon Master, every attack of that hits gets 10 extra flat damage. Plus whatever you roll and your modifier. What it does is if I was to do Great Weapon Master, I would have to have a 20 strength, just so I could at least have all my bonuses for my proficiency, because it's a -5. If you have 20 strength, you have that 5 modifier, which increases your thing. So at the minimum, you would almost have a +2 to hit if you were a Great Weapon Master.
Mm-hmm.
Which at a lower level is kind of good, but I digress. Although let's not forget on your Reckless Attack Undead, that does make you much more susceptible to being hit as well.
True. I know we're not talking about Barbarian this episode. It's just if you make a good Barbarian and have a ridiculous AC, Reckless Attack almost does not matter. But anyway, let's continue.
What would you? Are you gonna give the same score on this extra attack that you did the barbarian?
Uh, what did I give the extra attack to the barbarian? Because I feel like if I gave it lower than 10, I wasn't thinking correctly.
Um, I think you might have given it a 10. Yeah.
Yeah, extra attack 10 always.
All right.
I don't know if anyone can see. I don't know if he edited that in, but Saint here has a little notepad keeping track of things.
Yeah, they're not going to see that. They're just gonna have to take you at your word. Just because I had to do this while I was making the actual video last time, I decided you know what? If I do this now, I won't have to have the extra tool.
And they have to take my word for it. Saint, oh no, what do you have on your screen? Why is there so much porn? Why is most of it hentai?
I'm trying to get my testosterone up. No. Alright, we'll come to the last ability in the mainstay search of the fighter, which is called Indomitable, which you gain 1 at level 9. And I think you gain... Wait. Let me see here. Let me make sure. You can get 1 at level 9, you get 2 at level 13, and you get 3 at level 17. And what Abdominal is you can re-roll any saving roll you failed, but you must use the new roll. And this one, you have to get back on a long rest. It's not something you get back on a short rest like the other one. So it's going to have a bit of a lower thing in there. Because technically, if I was to use, let's say, luck, which I get 3 times a day before a short rest, I mean, I could use either roll. But no, it's one of those things. Laying on the ground, the female fighter, her shield just right next to her. She sees the giant flaming ball coming towards her face. She reaches out to try and grab her shield, and her finger slips, and then she pushes just a little harder and just barely drags it over her still form as she blocks the blast, saving her life barely.
No. Barely.
I mean, the ability to reroll a saving throw is always nice. I mean, comparison-wise, if you look at the Barbarian's ability to use Danger Sense and always just having advantage, I mean, this is like advantage on demand, where the other one is advantage at consistency. So, while I do like having the ability to save myself if I do mess up really bad, because I have rolled 2 natural ones in a roll before, and it insulted me greatly. But even with all that, I would have to give Indomitable probably I guess a 6 out of 10. Just because at the end of the day, I could have an additional feat, which does basically the same thing, but it lets me choose between the 2 rolls as opposed to having to use the new one. Because maybe I got hit by a dragon's breath or something like that, and I felt like the natural 16 I rolled plus whatever I had wasn't enough, and then I rolled a natural 3 with this ability and had to take that, and then I realized the save was actually 18, which I would have easily made with my 16 because it was a young dragon. That right there, it would have spat in my face.
I'm gonna have to agree and give it a 6. 1, it's at 9th level. Really? 9? I don't know about that. And
like at level 2, the Barbarian has 2 different saving throws which he has advantage on. One while he needs rage, and one that's just natural.
But 1, it's at 9th level, which is stupid. 2, this seems useful, but you can't do this again until a long rest. No, I can't agree with that one too much.
Yeah. I mean, if they made this a short rest where you got them back, I could raise it up to a 7, maybe an 8. If they lowered this down to be 6, then maybe let's say 9 and then 11, I could throw it down to a 6. I mean a 7, maybe an 8. If they did it both, where it was a short rest and you got it kind of sooner, I could easily give this an 8, maybe a 9, but probably an 8. But as it is, I would stick at a 6, maybe even drop it down to a 5 in my officialness.
Like
Just
I'm gonna
mainly
stick
because
with.
of, like, let me say that I could instantly give it a 9 right now as it is, if I could choose between my roles.
I'm a I'm a stick with a 6, even though that long rest is upsetting me. And no, I can't agree with this one too much. Like, it's nice to have, but there's so much on this condition, you know? You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, I know what you mean. All right,
Alright.
I do think we got enough time to go ahead and talk about the fighter here. So let me adjust this just a little bit. I mean the champion, yeah. So we'll hop down here because we got 45 minutes. I think we can talk about these few things right here as a champion.
Mm-hmm.
Mainly because, like, at the additional fighting style, we don't got it. And it's only like 1, 2, 3 different things. Let me make sure there's nothing else here. Martial versatility, there wasn't really much to really talk about there. I wouldn't bring it into the scoring system because it'd probably just bring it down, but it would be eventual. Or you just get the ability when you do the ability score improvements to change your fighting style like I told you to, or even into the Battle Master where you can change one of the features.
Real quick though, let's go over what a champion is.
Champion? Well, reading right here, the archetypal champion focuses on the development of raw physical power honed to deadly perfection. Those who model themselves on this archetype combine rigorous training with physical excellence to deal devastating blows. Basically, it's your fighter topped with a bit of whipped cream called fighter. It is the most, as a lot of people say, most basic choice you could choose for a fighter, because it doesn't genuinely add a lot, but what it adds is it's powerful, but if you're not taking any feats, this would actually get really boring really fast. I kind of had to agree with the dungeon dudes when they talked about it and kind of bashed it. But the fact is, the abilities it does have, some of them are pretty strong. Anything that can increase damage on a easier level, I consider quite strong. That said, I'll go ahead and just talk about the very first thing a champion gets at 3rd level, mind you, where he can now crit on a 19 or a 20. If you roll a natural 19, you automatically hit and you crit that damage right on the spot. And that hurts. Like if you were I think if you're a half orc and you crit, I don't think it has to be a natural 20. I think it just a crit in general. You get an extra damage die, which would be nice. If you were a high enough level barbarian and you took 3 points in the champion, you could probably get all your brutal criticals at a 19, which is scary. And overall, having a wider range of critical hits is just naturally powerful. So I would already give improved criticals a 10 out of 10, especially if I look a little further down, because they have another variety of improved that goes from 18 to 20. I'll just combine those right there. I would say a 10 out of 10, having a much wider range of getting natural crits is invaluable if you don't roll at regular 20s. But if you do roll regular 19s and 18s, this is a powerful class.
I want to. Sorry, go on. I can wait.
Nah, I already forgot what I was gonna say. Go ahead.
All right. Now, I want to be judgmental. I want to be a harsh critic on this, but better chance at critical. I can't dispute that. I can't harsh on that. I'm honestly gonna give it a 10. I want to be mean, be like, no, you get a 9, but I can't.
It's one of those rare, unavoidable 10 things. Because, I mean, if you don't roll above like 15, sure, this ability is useless to you, but we don't care about you. We care about having the easier access to what is our greatest virtue of damage. I mean, let's look again and say you're a paladin, and you took 3 as a champion.
Oh no!
Now just imagine a level 17 paladin. He hits significantly more crits. He hits you with that One of
That
those
holy
smites,
blade.
he hits you with that smite that gives him 10d8 radiant damage. And let's say further that he managed to do it twice in a game. That's a lot of goddamn damage. I'm assuming at the maximum, not counting his regular weapon, that's 160 damage of radiant right there on the spot.
Like I've never really looked into Paladin, but I know that he gets painful. He brings the hurt.
He brings the hurt, but in a theory, the barbarian and fighter can do it a little bit better because the paladin has moments where he can spike his damage. Like you want to use those spells and whatnot when you know you're gonna hit, or if you know you're gonna crit, and spike that stuff up. They can do hundreds of damage very easily. For the most part, it's stuff that things can't resist. But at the end of the day, once they're out of their spell slots, they kind of just become someone who bashes you. Is what they really do.
It, they become a barbarian without all the good
Without the
features
rage.
of a barbarian. You know.
But no, they're still good. I'm going to ignore the additional fighting style just because we already talked about that, but it's a +1. It's always good. But talking about remarkable athlete. Starting at 7th level, you can add half your proficiency bonus, rounded up to any strength, dex, or constitution check that you don't already use your proficiency bonus on. In addition, when you make a running long jump, the distance you can cover increases by a number of feet equal to your strength modifier. So at a maximum +5, if you got like a Velta Giant, maybe +9 feet. Which, depending on the place, I guess you could, although I can't really think of a lot of useful spots for that. And I'm taking the assumption that when it says any strength, dex, or constitution check, I could assume that just even the regular checks, like if you're just doing a strength check or just a dex check, you could add half your proficiency to those. Say you didn't take anything, if you didn't put your proficiency in athletics, well now you have half of it there. If you're at level, what was it again? If you're at max level, what's the, at max level you get 6, so you'd have a +3 to your thing there. Not a lot, but for all you know, that +3 is what's going to save your life. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's not the best, in my opinion.
Like,
I mean, I would have almost preferred that this didn't exist here. Considering what it says the champion's supposed to be, I would almost have just said, give it even another additional fighting style. I would have had said another fighting style and just been happy with that.
like,
because that would have made sense to me, I suppose. Because yes, a remarkable athlete, but there's things you can do to be good at that stuff. There is a feat that can do that. Not that I'd take that feat either, but at the end, I'd almost have to give this like a 4 because it just doesn't look good to me.
oh no, I want to like. I don't have, I really don't have anything against this one, but I'm not going wild for it either. So I want to give it like maybe a 7.
You gonna give it a 7? Alright.
Like it's something like, oh, okay, this can be useful, but then at the same time, it's just not ability I would use all the time.
Ask a question here. Because when it says jumping kind of stuff, I'm trying to figure out. Because there was a thing for like jumping. I can't exactly remember what it was.
When it comes to like physical prowess and physical abilities and athletical abilities, it makes me think of the kind of character I first made when I tried doing D&D, and that was the big gentle brute that hits things hard and can carry everything if need be. Like that is the type of character I started off with because that's something I can kind of be like, yeah, this feels right. like, and there was a campaign where
Hmm.
I literally carried a horse up a cliff. Like there was a
I would ask
cliff in
why,
the.
but it's D&D.
I was a Goliath, and everyone was like, "Damn, there's a cliff here. How are we gonna get the horse and the carriage up there?" And I was like, "I got this." Say I did a strength throw, and
All
I
right, so
carried a horse up a cliff.
I did find it in the thingy. So for a long jump, which the thing was gonna say, you could add 5 to it. So if you have 20 strength for that plus 5, you'd only jump 25 feet. 5 feet is nice, but
But it's not something you're
to
gonna see every other 5 minutes in the
yeah,
campaign. Yeah, like
that is something
maybe.
you're gonna just. It probably isn't even gonna be something your DM is thinking about a situation, because even then you could probably see the monk do it better.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Like you can jump 25 feet, cool, but that's not really gonna come in handy unless we're in like a cave or a mountainous area.
I mean, yeah,
Like,
like I s because
are you gonna
sure
be
that feat's like 30. That pit's 30 feet across. Well, if you look at the monk at a high enough level, they have 40 movement feet, and they can run along walls. So they're just going to run along the wall of this weird pit, get to the other side. Maybe they have to do a long jump to get to that other side, but they're gonna make it because they can get there with
like
almost everything they have. And
when I hear
then,
this? Sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead, man. I'm
Oh,
bashing.
I was just gonna say, I when I hear about this, it's just like the fighter's just like, "Hey guys, check what I can do." He jumps over. He jumps over the 25 feet gap, and he's like, "Haha, wasn't that cool?" And then he just sees the monk just running across the wall and
I have
jumps.
another. I have to have another question here.
What is your question?
Hold on here. Let me hop on the wizard for just a moment because I need to look at something. I didn't need to look at his spells.
But
It's
no,
very unprofessional what we're doing here, but no, hold on here.
yeah, it is.
What
But
is the bitch? So at level
I was
7, he has
agreeing with
access
you.
to
What do you mean,
4th
bitch?
level spells. What level is fly? Fly is a 3rd level spell. So by the time that the fighter champion gets the ability to jump a long distance, your wizard can cast fly on people.
Uh,
He can
yeah,
cast
no,
fly
that's
once, sure, but he could, in theory, because it lasts 10 minutes, he could, in theory, just carry people across this pit each and every time. And
like
his fly speed is 60 feet.
the more and more, the more I hear about this, it's just like that. It makes me think of that situation where like the little brother's been, well, like he's in like an athletic family. The little brother's been training his ass off. He's like, "Oh, look, I jumped 25 feet," and then the monk just runs along the wall, and he's like, "Good job, bro." And then the wizard's just like, the wizard's just slowly gliding over the pit, just like, yeah, keep at it.
Yeah. Also, think Aaron Cockra, a bird that can just straight up fly at the start.
Yeah.
Now,
Like,
I'm actually going to lower this to a 3 in my choice, just because the more I look at things that could be better than that. Yeah, because the way the long jump works is it goes off your strength modifier. So if you have 19 strength, that's 19 feet plus 4. So you automatically go down to 23. 22 if you have 18. Then if you get to 17, you only get 20 feet in that jump.
uh, I'm gonna give it a 4 because I know there's like random areas where this can be useful and will be useful, but there's not a lot. There's not a lot, and
Like like I said, this isn't even something a DM would even care to account for. This would be something where it'd just be like there's a pit over here, you see a rope and whatnot, and the fighter's just like, you know what?
Yeah,
I have this thing. I just want to jump it. I just want to try and jump it.
like,
And
yeah, I was about to say that. Like, if there's like a big pit, the DM is probably gonna be like, "Oh, look around," you know.
I'm gonna look at one more thing because I think they're called boots of feral leaping.
like, like there's just more ways to do the jump ability better than
There's even a spell called jump. Oh god, I spelled that wrong.
Like I feel like the people who made D&D, they were just like they saw fighter was like, hey, I don't have ability where I can go across stuff, and they're like, well, we don't want to give him something exactly like all the other characters, so let's just give him the ability to ability to jump.
No, it's just I might actually shift my thing down to a 0. Just because the more I think about it, and the more I talk about it, and the more I actually look at other things, is there's a first level spell called jump, right? It's something we have at level 1 that triples your jump distance, which I can assume means either your high jump where you just stand and jump up, or your running jump, because it doesn't say specifically which one it is.
Wait, so what would jump do to an average person with an average movement speed?
And so an average, let's say you just have 10 strength, so you could jump just 10 feet. That's immediately 30 feet right there that you could long jump, which immediately bashes the entirety of that ability into the ground.
I mean, jump would make the fighter ability interesting, but
It'd take it up to 75, but where the hell are you going to jump from a 75 thing?
you're not wrong. It's just the more we look into this, it's just like why.
You know, because if you look at the monk when they do jumps, they have something called feather. They have light falling or feather falling, and whatnot. They would naturally to reduce fall damage. Let's just take the assumption that you do take this jump, but you have a slow decline. When you hit that ground, nothing's gonna save you from taking any fall damage. Like, if they wanted to do something with this remarkable they should have done something similar to what the monk has to reduce fall damage, like a tuck and roll, just like tuck and roll, where you land and roll and reduce any fall damage you receive by. Let's just go with exactly what the monk says. I don't know what it is because I haven't looked there. I'm not gonna look there right now. But there's I gotta give this a 0 because I have. There's so many different things. Sure, some of them take resources, some of that, but this is just a waste of a class ability. I can't give it anything.
I want to be nice and keep it at 4, but I'm gonna lower it down to a 3.
I'm gonna just give it a 1, just to be that nice guy. Like, since you wanted to be nice. I would probably never even use this, no matter what happens. But I'm gonna give it 1 for that one random thing that you somehow managed to do, and then you're like, I used that ability, and everyone else is just like, I can't believe he used it.
I can't believe pigs flied.
Yeah. Just imagine being a very fat fighter. All right, let's. We're hitting an hour. Let's go ahead and just take this last thing because we already agreed that we weren't going to talk about the additional fighting thing or the extra critical. We combine them in one. We're looking at Survivor. At the 18th level, the fighter gains what is the pinnacle of resilience in battle. At the start of each turn, you regain health equal to 5 plus your Constitution modifier. So let's say 10 for the sake of it. As long as you have less than half your hit points. You don't gain this benefit if you have 0, but it's a consistent healing factor. Healing is nice. That's easily a perfected healing potion at that level. But I mean, yes, you have to be at half health, but if you're not being hit by something, getting up to half your hit points or a little higher, depending on what the thing is, it's pretty solid. So I can easily give this a 9.
I mean, can you use it outside of battle, or
Yes.
is it just okay? So it's just that
I would assume
constant.
yes, because at the start of each of your turn, that's like 6 seconds. And outside of combat, I don't think some of your regular abilities, because you can rage outside of combat, right? You
Mm-hmm.
could, I don't know, you could use your second wind outside of battle. You could use ki to go invisible, depending on your class outside of battle. You can use reliable talent outside of battle. You can use luck outside of battle. You can use a lot of things outside of battle. So I could assume that using survival, you could just get up to a little over half or just exactly half of your hit points outside of battle.
Ah, like I see nothing wrong with this, so I'm actually gonna see. I'm actually gonna give it a 10.
You're gonna give it a 10. That's fine.
I see nothing wrong with that. The only downside is it doesn't. It don't. You said it only goes to when you're at half health.
Yeah, yeah. When you're below half health, so if you have 100 HP and you're at 50 HP, you're not gonna heal. But if you have 49 HP, you go up to 59 HP on the next turn. And obviously, you don't gain this benefit if you have HP at 0, which that'd be bad because it'd be kind of broken if every time you went down, you immediately got up to the next turn like, ow, my body.
Ah,
So the enemies
okay.
would legitimately have to beat you to death while you're on the ground. Otherwise, you would consistently get up and slap them.
Alright. That gives me a reason to give it 9. I really didn't want to, but I didn't see any other downsides. I didn't see any other
I'm
downside to
not
it.
even calling that a downside. I'm calling that balancing.
Yeah, but
Because
balance is
because
trash.
you know what, I could give it a 10, just because if it was anything because that you're right, there's nothing wrong with it. If they had not left that stuff in, that would be probably one of the most broken abilities you have. Because if you were just missing health in general, and it allowed you to consistently get up to 100 HP, you would
Everyone
never,
go fighter.
yeah, you would never be without all your health points at any surprise situation. Like you could
Like,
just get out of a dragon battle and like 5 minutes later you're up at max HP walking around like nothing happened, while everyone else in your party is on death's door.
like, I feel like if that was the case, there were there would be so many campaigns where all there was fighters.
I mean, yes, but you also got to understand a lot of campaigns kind of end because of people considering the bread and butter of D&D characters from
Yeah.
7 to I think 13, maybe 14. So in some campaigns, this really wouldn't come into a factor. But if it did, and it was the way we're talking about without these little limitations, this would quite literally be God on the battlefield.
And that isn't counting like health, but like if you did that with health potions,
With your second wind and whatnot.
with your second win, like ah,
Like if someone tried to poison you and that poison did less than in this situation 10 damage a turn, you just walk around feeling fine.
just
Wouldn't
like
have to cure
ah,
yourself.
my stomach feels weird.
Pretty much, it's like, I think I ate a bad can of fish. It just throws up all this blood, and then continues walking like nothing happened.
And just like oh, that's a big puddle. That's bigger than usual. Walks
That's
down the
bigger than
street.
usual. Walks down the street, and you're just being stared at by all the civilians as they're wondering, like, what in the name of? I know, but thinking more about it, I can definitely raise that up to a 10.
Hmm. I'll keep it at 9.
You gonna keep it at a 9?
Yeah, just because the developers decided to use balance.
I mean, it's easier to go a half health. I mean, if you had 2/3 of your health and then you started healing, maybe that'd be a little bit of a different thing. But I can agree
Yeah.
with being at half. because it's a D10 per level. So let's say you rolled really good and had 180 health. I don't think there's really a lot that could put you down.
Oh no, like
because once you get to 90 health, below that you're gonna start healing, and that's ignoring anything else. What is 5 times? Let me see, 5 times 18. That's 5.
Like I know
that's almost 90 extra hit. Is that really? Am I just stupid here?
I know we keep on adding on a bunch of what ifs, but like,
oh yeah, no.
having a healer in the party.
So yeah, if you had 20 Constitution at 18th level and you happen to roll perfect health, you would have like 270 HP. So you'd start healing at 135 HP. And that's at 18th level. So
no, like that, and that shit would be wild. But no, let's. Is that the last bit, or do we have?
Yeah, that is the last bit. We're sitting at over an hour on this vid.
Yeah, you think that's good?
I think that's good. So
all right.
We're gonna call it good here, people, on this talk. Next time we're gonna talk about the
Thank you for joining us.
He's lying. Because we know no one's there.
Hatter's there. Hi, Hatter. How you doing?
I love you too. He is going to talk about something else, and he's probably going to laugh until he dies about how much we bashed the remarkable athlete. Or probably how much I proceed to go and bash that, because that is. Oh no, that is trash tier.
You were just beating a dead horse.
I kept talking about it. And the more I talked about it, the more I actually thought, and the worse
like
it got.
You Googled